Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm going to start promptly because realizing people are going to be coming in as we go along. Please mute yourselves. Otherwise, we will be muting you. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I would love it if any program directors in particular would just introduce themselves via the chat so we can see who's on. I have Dr. Yen with me monitoring the chat as we go along. So I know this is like an hour and a half, so it's a bit of a marathon. I apologize if you have to go halfway through. I will be, of course you want to stay to the end, I will be putting it on YouTube. I have actually, for once, remembered to start the recording, I believe. Or have I? Yes, I am actually recording it. I normally forget, that's why I'm saying that. Okay, so put any questions in chat. There will be opportunity to ask questions at the end as well. Oh, hi, Tom. I wasn't sure if you were, where are you, Tom? We thought you were going to come in a small conference room. That's okay. All right, so my thanks as ever. I shamelessly stole the title of this from Donna McGid, but now I've been doing it for 10 years. I think I have sort of co-rights to it. Please do interrupt me with questions. I will be stopping to, when you see this little question thing up in the corner, I'm going to be stopping and asking opinions from the program directors on the call. But any point, students, you're welcome to chime in with questions. We just may wait till a bit of a pause before we answer them. And again, please do mute yourselves. Can somebody just put in chat whether they can hear me okay, so I don't spend the first 10 minutes talking to myself?
Fine, yes.
Okay, grand. Okay, so I'm not putting my video on because it's been a very long day. This is me 20 pounds ago. Face looks the same, everything else looks a little different. With a group of female leaders in radiology, AUR, my all-time favorite conference.
5:33 p.m.
I don't know why my phone's decided to tell me the time. Joining me from Dartmouth, Stephanie Yen, who is our stellar program director, the best one in the country, of course. That's why you have to come to Dartmouth. And our stellar IR program director, Tom Burdick, who is joining us remotely, and they will be helping with this and answering some questions. So this session is really designed to give the perspective of radiology program directors. I know some of you, depending on your medical school, will have very good career counseling from your institution, both centrally and also from any of your radiology faculty. Others I know don't. What you might not have is a more broad perspective from radiology specific program directors who review the applications and interview candidates. And so I've really tried to incorporate a lot from a lot of people over the years. So this is not just my opinion. In fact, I don't interview people anymore. So here's our agenda. If you just want to glance down it, I've got a little bit statistics going on. We're then going to go through your personal statement and your applications, talking about interviews and talking about ranking. And then in the end, we'll have an open Q&A session. If you have not downloaded this already, students, I highly recommend you download the AMSA guide. This has been updated every single year. We're now on version 12. I wrote the original version a long time ago, and others have thankfully taken it over, and this is excellent. If you just Google AMSA guide or AMSA guide residency, you can pick it up really easily. It's on the AUR site. Which is no longer the AUR, it is now the AAR, the Association of Academic Radiologists. No, yes, yeah. Right, got the right. All right, so let's do a little bit about statistics. I'm sure, you know, the anxiety has been just beginning to rank up a little bit. It will get much worse, I can assure you of this. I don't have the figures updated slide from this for this year, but I do know that the numbers are extremely similar. And this is, this comes from the APDR, the Association of Program Directors in Radiology, tracking the number of applications per program. And you can see here that when you look at the total, the gray bar here, it has really gone up since 2020. So This is when the virtual interviews kicked in, and suddenly, boom, we were up here, and we've gone up, about 30% since that time. The figures from this year were pretty much level, so it didn't go up again, but still, this is a big rise. So, this means that you are having more competition, but also it's not as great a rise in the number of students applying to radiology. It's a big rise in the number of programs they are applying to. This rise here, back after 2015, was more students applying to radiology, but this rise here is them applying to more programs because it's virtual. They're not having to travel, ends up being a lot cheaper. And we'll talk a little bit more about that going on. Obviously, this has profound impacts, because if your program here is reviewing 946 applications and they're interviewing, say, 50 to 100 of those applications, your chances of your application getting kind of lost in the mass are much greater. So here's the latest DR stats. Now, the NRMP and also AAMC have an increasing number of statistics that you can access. Some of them are interactive, so you can kind of file down by your own personal situation. Some of them are more global statistics. They're always a year or two out. So there's some early statistics have come out from NRMP. The more detailed statistics are not out yet. There's actually now way too many statistics for me to show them all. So I'm just trying to filter some. So we're just over 1,000 DR positions in 2024, and one went unfilled, okay? 66% of US MD seniors, 51% of US DOs applying to DR matched in radiology, and those are the ones that radiology was their first choice. So, it's a much lower percentage than it used to be. There is about one DR position for each US senior applicant applying. This is actually about the same as last year, but decrease in 2022, where there were 1.3 positions. Just to show you the IR statistics, many less positions, obviously 137, again, only one unfilled, and a smaller match rate, so about 52% of MDs and a significantly lower rate of DOs who apply to IR matched in IR, and there's about 0.6 IR positions per US MD/DO senior applicant. The good news is the job market is booming. So it is a great time to be applying for radiology. Can I promise it's going to be like this in 5 years or 6 years and whenever you come out? No, but I think it's extremely unlikely that is anything but a really good market, because we're so short of radiologists. There's over 1,800 jobs on the American College of Radiology website currently. I want to talk a little bit about IR. The statistics I showed you were for the IR integrated program. So there are different ways to be able to get into IR. One is you apply to the integrated program from the outset. You'll spend the first 3 years doing doing diagnostic radiology, and then 2 years doing interventional following internship. PGY 2 to 4s can also transfer to a free internal IR slot via the if there is one available. The ESIR pathway allows you to do 4 years of IR, then 1 year of, 4 years of DR, 1 year of IR internally. You have to have a 500 case minimum by the end of that 4 years of DR to do that. Somebody needs muting. And then finally, there are programs that have the independent pathway, 4 years of DR, and then 2 years of IR, kind of like the old fellowship. So if you really want to do IR, or you maybe think you do, but you're a little equivocal about it, there are other ways to get into IR. And we can get some input from the folks later. The IR programs do prefer, some require a surgical PGY1 rather than medicine or transitional. And then, as I said, you have 2 to 4, you have PGY 2 to 4, same as DR. And then PGY 5 and 6 is IR, clinical rotations such as ICU, and then some required rotations in mammo and nuclear medicine. The Society of Interventional Radiologists is a great website. It has a lot of information for medical students. So go there definitely if you're considering applying to IR. All right. Disclaimers, all right? Some of this, it shouldn't offend you, but you know, I'm just telling you what people have told me. So just want to make sure that anything that isn't in the little blue box has come from ERAS applications that have been sent to various people in the past, not just this institution. And so I have quoted those live. Now, different programs have different expectations. I can't possibly describe in this session, you know, the expectations for every single program, which is why I'm going to get input from different program directors who are hopefully on the call. So, you know, the expectations and requirements of a small rural program may be very different than a very large urban program, for example. So I'm really trying to give you a global feel here. If you haven't yet, here's with my cat. You need to meet with your radiology student advisor. Everybody should have one. Hopefully DO students and international students can find somebody, if not at their radiology department, then in another radiology department who is interested. And we will ask for your CV and we will ask for your transcript, even if it's an informal transcript, so we can advise you properly. What you're going to do now, so this stage, you want to plan the rest of the summer and the fall, both general and subspecialty radiology electives, other electives that would be really good for you to do if you're planning to go into radiology, get you involved in potential research projects, have a discussion with them about away rotations, and then discuss the elements that will go into the supplemental information, and we'll be talking about that later. Just to let you know that generally speaking in radiology, away rotations are not a requirement. I realize if you're a DO, you may have very limited amounts of radiology at your institution and you may have to do an away rotation. We actually have 4 DOs on our elective here at the moment. But it's not a requirement. It's not like orthopedics or urology where you're expected to do 3 or 4 away rotations. So it's not a requirement, but if there's something that you cannot get at your local institution, then that's your opportunity to use that away rotation. When you meet with the faculty advisor, you want to discuss the sort of programs that you want to apply to, and they may agree with you and say, yes, great, go ahead, or they may adjust that a little bit and suggest some other types of programs that you should apply to. You also really want to discuss whether you apply to IR only versus applying to both IR and DR, or DR only. And we'll talk a bit much more about those later on. So the other thing you really need to get to think about now is who is going to write your letters of recommendation. Oh, sorry, that's the other thing you need to talk about. You need to talk about who is going to write your letters of recommendation, and we'll describe that again in just a minute. Virtual interviews are, again, they are a requirement from everybody, or just is it AAMC has required them all, right, Stephanie, or just the APDR definitely has?
Strongly suggested that you do it virtually.
Yeah, so it's going to be virtual interviews. Assume it's a virtual interviews. Some places do offer the opportunity for a second look visit, but those are only done after rankings have gone in so that they can't bias rankings. So if you want to check it out of place, you can contact the program director at that time. All right, now, what I'm talking about now, and I would certainly like Tom and any other IR program directors to put answers into chat about this. I please ask you to answer into chat because then we can filter them. Is does your program favor candidates who only apply to IR, or are you okay with them applying to both IR and DR? Our experience has been that I think there are less and less programs in recent years who really favor IR only applicants. And it is certainly a high risk for weaker candidates. But let's see what people say.
Tom says we are fine with applicants who apply for both. I know Drew Kaplan's on as well.
So,
Drew, candidates absolutely should apply to both IR and DR.
okay, so you hear that. So it sounds like at least is it any other IR program directors on the line who can chip in there? Certainly at the national meetings we've been at, that people really recognize, and Tom's just saying if you don't get into IR, you can get in through DR. Have been saying that if you apply to DR at the same program as you're applying to IR, that they won't hold that against you. I think they've just been realistic that, you know, this is what people need to do. They might still desperately want to be an IR boarded faculty, but they realize that, you know, maybe they might not get in with only 137 places in the country. So I think you're pretty good just applying to both. Anyone else? Okay.
Drew agrees with Tom.
Okay. All right. So, and
Drew also mentions that some of their best IR residents have been our ESIR residents.
so there is a ray of light, silver linings in virtual interviews. You know, certainly way less expensive. I mean, the students used to be spending thousands and thousands of dollars interviewing places. A lot less time of clinical services. You get more time to actually learn medicine rather than travel around the country. And it means that you can apply in a much wider geographic area than you might be able to if you had to keep flying across the country. Also, because these are generally speaking only half day or, you know, most 1 day interviews going on, that's going to decrease your scheduling conflicts because you don't have to have a travel day before and an interview day and a travel day after. So, you know, this I think has been really good. Certainly there are some negatives in trying to get to know the place, especially if it's in a very geographically different place than you've been before. I highly recommend don't over apply. It's not going to help you in the end. It overloads the programs. We're really trying to reduce the number of applications. When I talk about signaling in a bit, you'll see how that's going to play in and why it's not to your advantage. On the other hand, this means you really do need to do your research, making sure that you're applying to, you know, the 30 programs that you really want to go to, not 60 programs of whom 20 of them you really, you know, really wouldn't want to be there had you done your research, or you wouldn't want to live there. Programs have really adapted to this virtual environment in the last 3 years or so. They are providing on their program websites a lot more information for candidates in terms of the program and the institution and the area. Many are trying some very creative approaches to the virtual environment, both in terms of interviewing, providing some kind of a virtual tour, and social activities, which I'll talk about in a sec. Has anyone got any comments from the program directors about ways that they are trying to really help their candidates get to know their program or get to know their area in the virtual environment? All right, if you have anything, just toss it in the chat. And yeah, tough. But, you know, there are ways to do this. Okay, let's talk a little bit about timing stuff.
Drew says it's so hard, virtual meet and greets. That's what he suggested.
I have heard from the medical school the student candidates from our medical school that the most painful thing of the interviews are the social hours, the virtual social hours, where before they used to be sort of the students' favorite thing. All right, so you guys probably know this, but just to reiterate it, ERAS opens in June, like now. It's open, but NRMP doesn't open for you to submit stuff until September 16th, and it takes applications until the end of January 2025. The programs get to download applications October 1st. So there's a 2-week period where things are being loaded, but we can't look at any of them. So you really need to get your application in that period. Most programs start to offer interviews the moment they start reviewing candidates. So they don't wait until they've reviewed all 965 applications and then go back and sort of filter the list. Most programs start offering interviews straight away. So you're kind of luck. The earlier you get in, you kind of have greater odds. So the interview offers start almost immediately, but don't panic. They'll continue through January. There's often wait lists. There's people who cancel, and people may send out later interview offers. The rank list deadline this year is March 5th, and match week is March the 17th. So it seems a long way away now, but it won't be. So get your applications in as soon as you can. And some programs, and minority programs, I know some of the Boston ones, don't offer any interviews until the date for closure of applications to their institution closes. Now, here's the thing. Although NRMP is open for applications until January 31st, each individual program decides its own closure date. When's ours?
We accept them, but I mean, to be honest, when we start interviews the first week in November, and usually by mid-November, early December, we are full. We are completed.
You're full, yeah. So you can set your own date. So you might decide that, November 5th is the last day you'll accept applications, and you send out all the interview offers on, November 6th. So just because you haven't heard from the program, if you haven't heard a refusal for an interview, doesn't mean you can't get in.
True.
Okay. Anyone else who's got dates, throw them in. Ranking. So starts February 3rd, closes March 5th. All right. So let's think about our challenge number one. Our challenge number one is to get an interview. Right? Now, small things do matter, both good and bad, because if you've got 968 applications to plow through, little things that either tick people off or means that they, not going to look favorably on the candidate for some reason may be the swing factor. On the other hand, something that just calls you to that interview, you can read the chat going on from Tom there. Now, geography really does count, because we just know from experience that people who have grown up and been educated in the Midwest tend to go to, Midwest residencies, same with the Northeast, same with California and something. So when we're doing our geographical preferences that we'll talk about, that becomes really important. There are programs who will be relatively reluctant to interview somebody from across the country who has never shown any interest in that area of their country before, because they're going to kind of waste an interview slot. There is a certain amount of serendipity to this. So you've got to realize that, there's times when your application has been refused, not for any particularly good reason, but because they only had 2 interview slots left and they had 20 candidates for it. I can't reinforce this enough. Honesty is key with your application. Whatever the Supreme Court says at the moment, honesty is key when it comes to residency applications. If there's any hint of somebody, massaging their CV a little bit, or you get caught out in the interview about it, it's not going to look good for you. This is from 2023. I don't have one from the 2024, but these things have changed sort of very little apart from adding in signals over the last few years. And so this was, the program directors were asked to pick their rank what was important to them in students' applications. And they asked to pick, I think it was their top 3 or something or other, that they put in as sort of being super important. And you can see here that, over half the program directors felt the presence of a signal was the most important thing, along with the core clerkship grades. Step 1 score, there can't be many people who still have a step 1 score, so everyone's passed, so that's obviously going to disappear, but step 2 score is almost as important. And then you can see how things go down from there. Note, research experience, 11% felt that was super important, although 17% publications, which is kind of interesting. Geographical preference, a third of them. So your second challenge is interviewing to rank. So factors from the program director's survey. This is an older one. It's the only the nearest I could find. Factors affecting ranking, step 2 score. Interactions of faculty of residents. All of a sudden, that's super important. So how you interview is one of the most important things that comes up there. However good you look on paper, you can shoot yourself in the foot if you interview badly. So we're going to talk about this. Interpersonal skills. They want to be able to talk to you. Step 1 score is still up there for some reason. And then professionalism and ethics, super important. Personal statement, by the time we get down to ranking, you know, nobody cares a whole lot by it by that point. But we're going to start with the dreaded personal statements. So there are kind of 3 types of personal statements. They're the safe zone, right? Then there's the ones that show that there's something super interesting about you. So you're taking a little bit of a risk. And then there's the ones where you do literally shoot yourself in the foot. So you kind of decide what one you're going to do here. Why do we write them? We want to know about you, right? We see your CV, we know your scores. We want to know about you. But they've got to be very clear, they've got to be grammatical, and you need to start with something that's engaged faculty. If you're reading 968 personal statements, they get boring super fast. So these are just some sort of little highlights to remember. Your spelling and grammar must be perfect. And be careful, because, you know, there are things that spell check is not going to pick up. Okay, this guy, right away, I knew that I wanted to go into radiology. You might laugh, but that came through in an ERIS application. Did spell check pick it up? No. Perhaps they should have used Grammarly, which probably would have picked it up. Get it read by various different people who have superior grammar skills to you. I suggest your parents. We want personal statements that are concise, but they're eloquent and they show your personality. No more than 1 page. Don't go over 1 page. Seriously, it's like, I mean, when I used to review the applications, and perhaps I just wasn't a patient person, but when you went into, you fell onto a 2nd page with that personal statement, even electronically, your heart sank, you'd lost interest already. So 2/3 page is really good. You know, I know you're all super fascinating and interesting people, but, you know, you're maybe not that interesting. So just to show you that you can be too short, this was the entire personal statement of an applicant. And this is what it looked like electronically. So you can be too short. It was definitely succinct. We weren't quite sure what to do with this. We want you to include why you want to be a radiologist, obviously, but realize that we have heard every reason. Well, I mean, I guess you could come out with some real ones, but you know, I'm a visual learner, right? Everyone says everyone's a visual learner. We all learn visually. You know, the news, we all learn visually. So I wouldn't put that in. People get a little obsessed about photography and how they bought their, you know, had their first camera as a present when they were 5 years old. Maybe, you know, you do want an 8 to 5 job with excellent pay, and, you know, you certainly can find an 8 to 5 job with excellent pay in radiology, although the 8 to 5 is getting much less common. If you want to go into interventional radiology, don't even think about that. We see a lot of, you guys can, I'll let you just read the chat going on there. The cute medical stories, you know, this always happens. Oh, you know, I went down to CT with my patient and then, you know, I realized this was it. You know, the stars came up, the angels sang, etc., etc. I think that a lot of medical schools tell students that they need to start with that. You don't. Trust me, you don't. What do we like to read? We want to read, you know, what makes you interesting? What makes you unique? What have you done in your life that have formulated who you are now? You know, have you had another life as another job? And what have you taken out of that? and you're planning to bring to radiology. We want to know what you want from the program, but we want to know what strengths you will bring to that program. And I'm just going to stop here to get a little input from the others.
Okay, Tom says, please don't lecture to us about why radiology is great and important. We know. He also mentioned that, you know, we spend a lot of time with the residents elbow to elbow, and we want to find bright, hardworking residents and applicants that we want to spend time with. So if you can convey that through your personal statement, it's helpful to us.
I mean, if you did something that involved you running a team, for example, some sort of leadership thing, how are you going to apply that to your residency program? You know, is this something that you want to develop with the residents, that you would love to be a chief resident one day so that you can apply these team skills? Have you done things before that have meant that you've had to be incredibly detail orientated and very good at organizing tasks? You know, things like that. We're interested in what you can bring to the program as well as what you want from a program. If there are any red flags in your application in any way, so if there's dates that are missing, so when you're reviewing that number of applications, you get really good at knowing when the student should have gone to college, left college, gone to med school, be leaving med school. And so those dates are kind of burned into the program director's minds after the first 20 applications. So they'll spot any gaps. And so you need to be able to explain those gaps. Now, it may be absolutely fine. You took a medical leave. You had an aged parent you had to look after. You did a research year. You decided to climb Everest and discover yourself. But, just explain them so they don't have to ask you. Don't try to be too cute. I'll just let you read these. I didn't quite understand the first one, but it was kind of cute. And then the second one promptly followed it with a cliched childhood anecdote. Show your strengths without being cocky. We still remember the application that said, I am a force to be reckoned with. We didn't interview her. We were tempted, but we didn't. I aspire to be a better than average neuroradiologist. Sounds like a sort of kind of a low goal. You can easily put too much information. Remember that everything you put into your application, whether it's in your personal statement or it's in your ERAS application, is fair game for us to ask you about. You don't put it in, there's a lot of things we can't ask you about. We certainly couldn't ask you how much you weighed, but this guy put his, he literally talked about his weight journey, and the first thing everyone asked in his interview was, well, how much do you weigh now? Because he'd done this, so be a little careful. More TMIs. This one, well, you can read it, and we all got this idea. We didn't interview this one. There's a kind of narrow margin between interesting and weird, but we like interesting. Any comments from program directors about what else they would like to have in their personal statement? Or what they really hate seeing in it?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Feel free to throw them in. Do not plagiarize. Yes, you can get personal statements on the web. I'm sure that AI can write your personal statement. I'm sure that this year we will have personal statements from ChatGPT. But, be very careful. There are a lot of resources to check plagiarization. And ChatGPT it's pretty good. I personally wouldn't be against saying, please reduce this. Dear ChatGPT, here's my personal statement. Please reduce it to only 2/3 of a page or something. I think that that's probably a pretty sensible thing to do. I would do that. I did that with documents here from our med school. But be super careful about this. It's again, not going. If you get found out, it's not going to look good. So there are plagiarism checkers out there. They're free on the web. We can use them. Now, what about personalizing personal statements? You have the opportunity to send different personal statements to some or even all, if you've got no social life, programs that you are applying to. So you can write a totally different personal statement or just a little bit different in kind of a paragraph or a few sentences at the bottom. If you're applying to Dartmouth Hitchcock, then you're applying to Tufts or NYU or University of Maryland. Why might you do that? Well, I think don't just slot in the program name. So don't just put in, you know, I am very happy to apply to ... medical center because, you know, we're not stupid. We know about that. But if you want to show why you're particularly interested in a program or particularly interested in an area, so, you know, for example, you've always visited, I'm obviously going to use my own personal examples here. You spent camp in Vermont for years. You're very familiar with the area and you love it. You've got family who live here, which makes you particularly interested. You are super interested in education. So, you know, you want to go somewhere where, you know, and you know that Dr. X is a really good educator, or that, you know, you've heard that Dr. So-and-so is, you're really interested in neuroradiology, and that, you know, they have a fabulous reputation for neuroradiology, and so this is somewhere you'd like to go. Or that program does some very specific electives or in the fourth year that you'd like to do. So unique program attributes. So do your research. This data is all out there. And this is particularly important if you're not coming from a geographical sort of similar place, to sort of let people know why you might actually come across the country. Do get them reviewed. It's Tom.
Yeah. Well, we basically do ask them why they want to, what attracts them to the Upper Valley here. As he says, wants to live out in the Greenwoods with us for 5 years. If you don't do that, we assume you haven't thought about it much. Not a negative, but you missed a chance.
Yes, there are a lot of woods here. Get them reviewed by several people. Most mentors are willing to review your personal statement once. The nice ones are willing to review it twice. I don't know anyone who's willing to review it 3 times. What's that? There's something just came across.
Let me think. Not here.
I just saw. Scroll down. Oh, that's weird. I saw something about from Lee coming across. Okay, it may come to yours in a sec. Okay, so things have changed in the last couple of years where we've moved into the areas of signaling and supplemental information. So this will be our 3rd year, right?
3rd year.
3rd year of this. Different specialties have moved into this at different rates. So this will be a 3rd year for radiology. In the 2024 cycle, there were 21 specialties, and I think it's going to increase slightly since then. So the idea of the supplemental information is to give a more holistic type review to your application. So you're not just focusing on, you know, people's scores and their number of publications and etc. So it was a separate application, drove everyone insane. Now it's integrated into the main ERAS. It was last year and it will be this year. This information and the signaling is intended to only be used for interview selection, and they come out. I don't know how they could possibly enforce this, but they come out with information telling us that we can use it to decide if we interview you, but we cannot use it for ranking. Obviously, that's a sort of honor code thing. But just to let you know, that's what we're told to do. Okay, so what's in the supplemental information? So this depends on the specialty. Obviously, I'm just going to talk about radiology here. Your geographic preference, your past experiences, and your program signaling. So this is optional for students. You don't have to put anything in. I think you'd be daft if you didn't put anything in, but you don't have to. And you don't have to put anything in every section. You could decide not to put anything in the signaling or not to put anything in the the geographical preference. This is optional also for programs. Virtually all of them decided to do it in 2023. I think, you know, all of them did it in 2024, and I'm pretty sure that they will this year as well. Again, it's really to our benefit. I don't know why we'd not do it. So geographic preferences. So you can have up to 3 geographic preferences, and they've divided the US. I can't remember if I got a map. No, I haven't. Sorry. Into 16 geographic divisions. And this is the US governmental divisions. And, you know, it'll be very clear to you on your application of how these are divided up. You can add a 300-character description of your preference. So you can put a little bit of blurb, you know, I want to live in a big city, but one that has lots of parks and really good rail network or whatever. You also separately, so separate from the geographic preference, you rank urban versus rural on a 5-point scale, which is kind of interesting. So, you know, you can decide you want to be in New York State, but you want to be rural, not in the city. So what happens to the programs? The programs know if you have chosen their area, they don't know what other areas you've selected, and they don't know if you have no preference, and they know if you have no preference. So one of your options is, I don't care where I end up. What they don't know is if you are not putting in a supplemental application or you decided not to put in a geographic preference. I mean, not putting in a geographic preference, to my mind, you might as well put in, I don't have a geographic preference. And they don't know if you didn't select them. So it's all a bit, I don't know who designed this, sort of MI5 or something, but
It's the benefit of the candidate.
it's designed to be to your benefit, but not our benefit, which is fair enough. So let me just try and work you through an example. So you decided that you wanted to apply to the Midwest, the Southeast, and the Southwest, but you applied to us. We wouldn't know if you just didn't want to be with us or that you just hadn't put in a preference. So it's kind of like that. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Put in a question if in the text, students, if that doesn't make sense, then I'm going to make Stephanie answer it. Past experience. So past experiences are going in for all applications, and you can put in 10 selected experiences, right? So these will go to, if you're doing past experiences, they're going to go in. So what are these? You describe 10 things, activities, responsibilities, and contexts of the little boxes you have to do it under, 10 selected experiences. And out of that, you have 3 most meaningful experiences where you write a 300-character essay, which is basically a paragraph on it. So in other words, you pick 10 things that have happened in your life or career, such as it is to date, where these are sort of ones that you think might attract us to you or might affect what kind of program you're going to pick. So you might say that it was, you know, serving in a soup kitchen made you, you know, really want to be, okay, so Tom's just saying that he looks for interview questions and these experiences, which I think is great. I think it's really opened up our ability to be able to ask questions. So you might say you want to, you know, being a soup kitchen was something that was really meaningful to you because you want to go and work in a rurally disadvantaged area, you know, blah, blah, blah. You might put that a particular research experience with a particular faculty was a selected experience you want to expand more on, and that might or might not be a meaningful experience. So just to start thinking about these now, if you haven't already, and 10 is quite a lot. And then, you know, picking out those 3, I think is less challenging. You then can tag these experiences. There's a whole list of metadata tags. I'm not going to go into them, but it's the type of experience, the primary focus area, the characteristic you developed during the experience. And this is supposed to help us sort candidates. I'm not sure it does, but it's supposed to. Okay. So everybody's got to put in that. You then have the option of describing an impactful experience. You don't have to do this. This is longer, I think, isn't it? Can't remember. I think that you get a little bit more space for doing this.
It's not very.
This is not very long.
No,
Is it another 300-word one?
probably about that, because I remember it's like 2 months.
Yeah. So you only should do this if you really have something to say. So you don't have to fill it in. So if you've got some kind of a challenge or an obstacle you had to overcome, you know, you're the first person in your family to go to college, you had some educational challenges that you had to overcome. So particularly if you've, you know, got a low step score, or you failed an exam, or you failed a rotation, this is a good time to be able to put these in. And what they really want to see is, like, what did you bring out of that? So, you know, what has not just, you know, well, I screwed up neurology as a, you know, because of that, I changed my study plan, and, you know, and I did a resit and I did great, or whatever. All right. Emmanuel, looks at 750. Okay, so I thought it was a bit more. Thank you for letting me know, Emmanuel. All right, program signaling. This is so, so important. The first year we did this, there were just 6 signals you could do. Now, for radiology, you can do 12 signals, 6 gold and 6 silver. I hope saying something about my network. Hopefully it's okay. I'm at work. Can't see how any better. The gold and silver, sort of like the gold, I really, really want to go to your program, and silver is I really want to go to your program. And if you don't signal them, then yeah, I wouldn't mind going to your program. Which is that fair, or am I being unfair?
The other thing is that they're making their decision based on what they know the program before they interview, right?
Yeah.
So we need to take some of that into account as well.
Yes. So remember, you do these before you've interviewed there, and we can't use this signaling to rank you. In theory, we don't use it. I can't promise for everyone else. There's a couple of little quirks with this. One is that you must include your home or an away rotation. That wasn't the first year, you didn't have to include it, but now you do. If you don't want to go to your home institution, you don't need to include it. But even if you're applying to your home and your advisor, your faculty advisor says to you, oh no, we're going to interview you anyway, you need to include your home one in that. It's not automatic. Programs know if they've been signaled. They don't know if you've either not signaled them or you decided not to do any signaling. And I'm going to show you that's not necessarily a good idea in a minute. Every specialty has a different number of signals, and there are some specialties who have very low numbers of signals and some who have high. I think it's ortho who has 30. When programs that have, we're sort of in the middle range. Specialties that have very high number of signals is effectively a cap. So it means if you don't signal that program, you might as well not bother applying to it. We're not at that stage yet, but there is talk about increasing our number of signals to reduce the number of applications. But that's for next year, that won't be there. So these are the figures in 2023. I've only seen prelim data, and I've got one slide on the data from 2024. But you are 6 times more likely in DR to be interviewed if you signal them, and 3.5 times, 3.3 more likely to be interviewed if you signal them in IR. And there is a summative effect for geography plus signal. I think I have a slide on that. Yes, I do have a slide. So in other words, if you you say that you want to be in the area and you signal them, is additive. But there is really wide variation between programs. And when they looked at, and we saw some data presented at our annual meeting on what different programs did, bigger programs often said, well, we basically didn't interview you if you didn't signal us. These numbers apply for both gold and signal. So this is this is the 2023 data where we only had one set of signals. I'm going to show you the other ones in just a minute to the student who just asked that. So this is when we only had 6 signals. Smaller programs are, if we only interviewed the people who signaled us, we wouldn't be able to interview enough people. Is that a fair statement?
Actually, we increased this year, so we interviewed 70, we had 780 applications, we interviewed 70, and we had about 70 to 80 with signals.
Signals. Oh yeah, that's good, because the previous year I think we'd had about 30.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the only sort of official data that I've managed to get. I found out, and this was from ERAS, from AAMC, and this is specific to radiology. So this is the signal interview conversion rate. I know that's a kind of a weird figure, but it's basically how likely you were to be interviewed if you put a gold signal in, a silver signal in, or none. And you can see, if you look at the whisker plots on this whisker box plot, there is quite a range of differences depending on the different programs. This is data from the different programs. So, some of them gold, yeah, you almost guaranteed to be interviews, and others gold sort of didn't have that much effect. But there is a significant difference between none and the other two, and a slight weighting towards gold. And I expect this will be similar again this year. This is the data from the year before. So this is the first year of signaling, and that diagnostic radiology, you didn't send a program signal, 9% chance of being interviewed compared to 58%. This was only with 6 signals. And then this is just showing the additive effect of geographic preferencing. So this is no signal preference, no geographic preference matched. And this is no geographic preference, say that, we don't care, we go, but this is where you say, yeah, I want to go to your area, and you've sent them a signal. So you can see how this really bops up here. And this is the same figures for interventional radiology, no program signal compared to program signals. So what this is saying to me is use those program signals strategically, but do use them. And then this is the same data with interventional radiology, not quite such a profound effect, as you can see, with the geographic preference and the programs, but again, with the program signal. All right, letters of reference. Okay, so how many do you need? You need 3 to 4. You need 1 or preferably 2 from the subspecialty, usually 1 from a sub-internship. And then if you have a research mentor, they're a great person. You do not need a chair letter in radiology. In fact, chair letters for medical students are usually completely hopeless. They're just going to reiterate their CV, unless this happen to be a chair who has been your mentor or you've done research with or something like that. So you don't have to have a chair letter, which is different from some other specialties. Okay, so a lot of letters become very sort of, yeah, yeah, okay, nothing bad written, nothing fabulous written, scan them, cast them aside. This would be a negative letter of recommendation. Right? Is there anything negative written there? No, but we all know what this really means. So what's the best? Somebody who really knows you. So someone who's worked with you for a protracted period, not that they've, Drew's got some good stuff I'll say in a minute. Somebody you've worked with alongside for a long time, not somebody who you spent 4 hours on a readout station with, because they don't know you. They know that you didn't piss them off for 4 hours. That's all they know. So I would rather see a letter from, someone you was a mentor. It could have been, it doesn't even have to be radiology. Perhaps this is the undoctoring mentor who has met you for 4 years of medical school. Maybe it's a medically related volunteer activity, something in there from someone who knows you. What's the?
Drew says you need a very capitalized, strong, personalized letter of recommendation. Go to your intended letter writer and look them in the eye and ask for that.
Yes, do. Okay. Now, as we'll talk about later, a not insignificant number of people are applying to more than 1 residency. Well, yeah, but you need more. You need 1 great one. You still need more than one, Tom. If you are applying to different specialties and you've got different letter writers, please make sure that they have the correct specialty in it. They're aware of what letter they are writing, because we have seen this in radiology. Ask them now, okay? I know it's July, the letters are not due in until sort of September, but send them the ERAS link. Ask them before you send them that. They don't like, people are not going to like just getting that unless you've spoken to them already. I would recommend you send your CV and transcript so they can review that. They should know how to upload to ERAS. It's now pretty easy. It used to be a little challenging.
There's a question. What do you think is the minimum time a mentor should know you to write a strong letter of recommendation?
Depends on how much quality time they've spent with you, to be honest. I mean, if I've worked with a student for a month doing a subspecialty elective in women's imaging, I feel I know them really well by the end of that. I have other students who, you know, I've known for 3 years, but, you know, very superficially or much less superficially to be able to write a letter. So it really depends on the intensity of contact rather than the amount of time. And, you know, one that you've done something, you haven't just sat and looked at CTs with them. Because nobody can really judge your abilities other than, you know, to give you some kind of an evaluation on that. Now, AMSA, APDR, has a standardized letter of recommendation. There is a template available at the AMSA website. So you can just Google AMSA standardized LOR. It's also available on the APDR website. It's a combination of ranking in different categories and focus comments. I really like using this to write my recommendations. I'll come back to that question in a sec. You know, people might not feel comfortable doing it. They might prefer to write a letter. Stephanie, what would you say is your general impression on reading those?
I prefer the answer letter. I mean, I think it's standardized. It allows for comparison among other students that you've known in the past as well, relatively. And it also allows me to compare students from the same institution that are applying, or same med school that are applying. I prefer them. They're not used that, I mean, I think we'd probably say 20 to 30%, if that,
Yeah.
the ones that I see.
So you've got to realize that a lot of the people writing your letters will not know this exists. In fact, the majority, aside from program directors and student directors, most people do not know this standardized letter exists. So it's up to you to go out, send it to the people who'll be writing letters and say, hey, you know, APDR likes this, uses it. There's been a lot of support for it nationally. If you would like to use it, please feel free. Most of them will be so relieved to have that letter to be able to write, because they're a lot easier to write. They're a lot more concrete. You don't have to use, you know, your creative writing skills quite as much otherwise. So I highly recommend you do it. Right. There's a couple of questions that let's just.
So one is, the students heard that you need a letter from a radiologist. If you're applying to DR, is a letter from an IR attending acceptable to meet this requirement?
Yes, is the answer.
Then how will the recording be available?
Recording, I will post it on YouTube sometime in the next week, so you can look there. The recording from last year is already up there, and I will send it out to everyone who's on my email list, and I will put it in my Twitter.
So a couple of things. Tom said that if you don't have a letter from IR, I start wondering why, so explain that somewhere. And then this is a question for IMG. Should they submit a letter from their home country or only letters from US-based physicians, particularly when it comes to clinical letters?
I think it's okay to have, I mean, to have something from your home country. I mean, you know, we all respect there are extremely good physicians around the world. I mean, obviously you do want it in English, you know, I wouldn't want to have all of them from there if you're not applying directly for, I mean, obviously if you're applying directly from abroad, you will have to have it. But so I would like to see something from your work in US in whatever form it's been, but having one or two from abroad is fine.
So clarification, if we're applying to DR and IR, should we ask our letter writers to write 2 versions, one for each specialty?
No, I do not think that's okay. All right, we're going to forget to write your letters because we have a lot of things on. So please remind us. So, you know, don't be hesitate to say, because you'll know when we've submitted them. But don't hesitate to say, you know, drop a letter and say, hey, you know, I know you've got a lot on, and, you know, it's summer, so everyone kind of, you know, obviously gets busy doing fun things, apart from me, who'll be working all summer, apparently. So drop them a letter. You know, if you haven't heard that your letter's been uploaded by, you know, kind of early September, reach out to them and prompt them. And they'll be really happy you did, honest. Okay, now can you submit your application before letters in? Yes, you can. But do chase them. We can't tell on the application end. Am I right with that? Is it still the same?
Well, I can see the number of letters of recommendations that are uploaded. I can't tell if you're only submitting one versus if you're going to submit three.
Yeah,
So,
so you know, we don't know if they're missing. Most programs will at least review the application. If you've got at least 2 letters, that most places won't do it. If you've only got 1, some are going to wait till they have 3. But we won't know. Maybe your 4th letter is the most dynamo letter, and we don't know. It's not there. Okay. Anything?
A great letter is a great letter, but a great letter from an IR is even better. It's from Tom.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's talk a little bit about CV and ERS application. It's got to be in chronological order. And as I said before, no time gaps. I'm sure that none of you spent that time gap in jail, but we don't know. I was once asked that for a time gap in my CV. That's why I say it.
That's the first thing I look for is
Yeah,
chronological. Any gaps.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone does. I used to when I review them. You want to include all employment unless it's fluff. You only need brief detail. This student, it sounded absolutely delicious, but a little bit too much. Volunteer activities are now included in your experiences, so you can put volunteer activities in there. Include the significant ones. Explain your role and do not exaggerate. We once had an applicant who, when we added up all his, quote, volunteer activities and stuff outside of medical school, it added up to 40 hours a week. So we were like, okay, you know, you're spending 40 hours doing research and volunteer activity, you know, there's no way. So it didn't look very good.
After just one thing, going back to letters, the question is, if we do an away rotation for DR, is it important to get a letter from each rotation?
No, you're not going to get it. I would suggest that you pick on one person you spent a lot of time with for an away rotation, or if you had a mentor there who was organizing it. So then ask them if they will write the letter, but you do not need, you're going to have you know, they'll be doing evaluations, maybe from each rotation, depends on how it's set up. You certainly do not need a letter from each radiologist, and you'll never get them to do it.
So one more question regarding letters from a radiologist. Is there a preference for a letter to be from a radiologist at your home institution or from an away rotation? I think for whoever knows you the best. I mean, that's what I'm looking for, is someone who knows you the best. It's not going to be helpful to me if they're just say you attended, you know, the rotation, we can sort of figure out when they do the standard letter, but someone who knows you well, whether it be your home radiologist or away radiologist, that is the one that I would get the letter from.
I totally agree. These are not volunteer activities, but have all appeared in ERS applications. I particularly like being on the bone marrow list, but not having actually donated.
I should interrupt one more time. For life experience before medical school, many may have some of these before and may have issues listing all jobs with the restriction to 10. What would you recommend?
So your jobs will be listed separately because they're jobs, but experiences are like volunteer activities. Okay, so the experience can be a job or a volunteer activity or a research project or, you know, a gazillion other things. Your jobs will be listed. So even if you've had 10 jobs before medical school, which you would have had been working at it, but you know, if you had 10 jobs for medical school or 15 jobs for medical school, you can list those chronologically. But your experiences, you're going to bring out detail in any of those. You know, you're probably not going to want to sort of talk about, I don't know, that you were working in Starbucks while you were at med school or whatever. I mean, there's no, you know, probably need to put it there, but you're not going to have any great experience to describe about it. Does that make sense?
Yep. And then one question is regarding letter writers. Should they write 2 versions, one for IM prelim versus DR?
IM often needs a letter from, they usually, if you're applying to an IM prelim, they have certain requirements for letters they need, and often they need a chair of IM letter. But a letter from, me to about a candidate who's going to radiology and wants to do an IM prelim is exactly the same letter. Now, if that student was wanting to apply to internal medicine residency, that would be another matter. Well, I don't think they would ask, no one's ever asked me to do that, but no, it's fine. Because, what do we want? We want, if you are looking for an intern, you're looking for the same kind of skill set that we're going to be describing in that letter. That you're really smart and you're dedicated and you've got stuff done and you show these tremendous leadership skills. So I think it's fine. Okay, volunteer activities.
Should reapplicants address this status in the personal statement, supplemental application, or both? I personally think it should be addressed in the personal statement.
You hear that? Personal statement. I don't think there's any hard and fast. It certainly should be in one or the other. I think personal statement gives you a little bit more, room to, a little more room to maneuver to describe it. Okay, volunteer activities. This is for NRP 2022, so latest data hasn't come out yet. And I think this shows that volunteer activities, the number of volunteer activities doesn't make a huge impact on whether you match or not. Research activities, list them. Be honest about your time commitment, be honest about your role, and you need to say if there's a published outcome or a presented outcome or a planned published outcome. Just again, looking across the board with the turquoise being not matched and the blue being matched, number of publications, you can have, lots being matched, but you can also have so many and be unmatched. So it helps. It's also going to help somewhat depending on the institution. So if it's a very academic institution, especially if you're going on one of the more academic tracks, they're obviously going to be looking for it. If it's a more community-based practice, that's obviously going to be less important to them. What is important is that my slides are not progressing. Are those slides progressing to everyone else? Is it just, I think whoever just said that, it's your connection. You might want to come out and come back in. But anyone else, if the slide doesn't say research activities or the question mark, let me know. Okay, I think it's your connection, sorry. You do need to be able to discuss the project and the results, because if you said that you were involved with this project and you can't say anything about that project, even in the most superficial thing, if a paper's been published about it, I suggest you read it. So you at least are familiar with the abstract, if nothing else. Right. Average USMLE step 2 scores. These have bounced around a little bit up and down through the years. There is a somewhat higher score, 245 mean with the match compared to the unmatched, and they are a little bit higher for IR, as you can see. Now all the emphasis has gone off step 1. It's now all on step 2. We all knew that was happening. Now, some programs, ours doesn't, but some programs do have a step 2 cutoff score before they were interviewed. And they use this as a way, and according to the NRP survey, up to half have it. They use it as a way to kind of decrease the number of applications that they have to review in detail, so they don't have 968. What score that is, 220, 210. I think if we saw one under 200, we'd have to have a good reason to dig further. I have heard that some major academic practices have 240. So a pretty high level there because they're having so many incredibly high qualification candidates. I don't know if anyone on the line is willing to put in their 5 cents about that. Okay, if you want to say you've got cutoff or not, you can put it in. All right, so advice about step 2, do it early. And this always was my advice, but now I think it's crucial since step 1 pass fail, because you know, we've lost, and a lot of clinical rotations are now pass fail. So, you know, we're getting less and less hard data to be able to review people on. Give yourself an advantage.
There's a question regarding step one, particularly if they actually have a score, like this person's in the Navy. How will that be weighted compared to pass-fail scores?
So, you know, I think when they see that, I mean, I want to prejudge everyone in the country, but when they see that and they, you know, they see you did fine, they're going to kind of say, okay, it's like a pass. They see if you got 260, they're going to go, awesome. You know, we're going to, you know, part of us is still using our own mental standard when we have a few candidates like that. So it may be to your advantage, to my mind. I don't think it's going to be to you. If you've got a very low, if you're in the middle rank, it's probably not going to help one way or the other. If you're very good, it's going to help. If it's very bad, it's, you know, it'll rank better than a fail. AOA for radiology is not huge. IR and DR are both 19, 20%.
Petra, there was some clarification. What do you mean by early for step two in terms of months before ARIS is submitted?
I think it takes, and anyone who's online, correct me about this because it's a moving target. I think it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get the results. Is that still true? Anyone who knows? So you really want to have that score in before October 1, right?
About 2 weeks for step two results.
Oh, okay, so it's come down. That's good. It
Gooding,
was.
our former graduate, Eric Goodman, developed a grading rubric for the entire applications we have used and refined for 2 to 3 years, which we de-emphasize step two, but those who score above the interview cutoff tend to have good step two scores. We also use a rubric too that takes into account just step scores as one of our 10 parameters.
Should you put an update to your application after after the October 1 deadline, if it's something important? So, you know, you got a paper published or presented, you got some great new award, you got a good step two score. If you didn't get a good step two score, you might not want to publish that, but, you know, things that are going to help you. You can use a standardized form like this that you can just send out to a bunch of people. Just to sort of, you know, let them know, maybe some will bin it, but, you know, it's not going to hurt you. This was not what we considered a real positive thing. Do they still do photos?
Yep.
Okay. Photos. Boring is good. So think about passport photos, but with a smile. You need to be appropriately dressed. Only you in the picture, not like this guy. I mean, cute, but not good for this. Hobbies and interests. Whether anyone pays any attention to hobbies and interests, which are in your experiences section now, will depend on the program. They provide great topics for board interviewers to talk about. But again, only put it in if you want to discuss it. So, you know, unusual hobbies, people are going to talk about because, you know, when you've interviewed 70 or 80 people, you want to talk about something a little different. It needs to be really a hobby. We'll show you some examples in a minute. If you're saying you're doing something that, you know, we can check on the web, be careful. Long time ago, we had somebody who said he played college football who didn't on checking. If you play in a school concert, you are not a concert pianist. These are not hobbies, but all of these have guys can read that text. So these are not hobbies, right? They have all appeared on our applications, which I thought was kind of good. You know, dreaming about sailing, but not actually sailing like that. Some hobbies, keep them to yourselves. Competitive eating is very fascinating, but weird. Semi-competitive eating is almost as weird. And we did ask that guy a lot about it. I learned a lot about semi-competitive eating, and mango and doodles, sweet, but I'm not sure it should be one of your experiences.
Does a great step three score possibly affect the application and setting of an average step two score?
There's so few that we actually see. So few that we see. So I don't know that I can ask that. What do you say?
Sure, love a good park.
What's an ARC? Okay. All right. Social network websites. Here we go. So Drew's saying, like, look at the hobbies and interests. Yeah, I remember desperately, like I interviewed 9 men and 1 woman, and all 9 men were had hobbies of ball sports, which I don't play any, and I don't watch any. I'm totally uninterested. And the woman said her hobby was dressmaking, which I do, and so I was very excited about being able to talk to my 9th candidate. And turned out she made an apron once, so that didn't kind of help her too much. All right, social networks, be careful who you friend. You know, assume everything you post is public and it is considered part of professionalism nowadays. So be super careful. You know, anything inappropriate photographs, for example, that are up there. Anything where people could track you down, just get rid of it. Get rid of it now. Aunt Minnie, it's very dangerous. There is a lot of trolling, and actually I've learned what trolling is since I started doing these presentations. There's a lot of trolling. So there are, believe it or not, students who during interview season will go on to Aunt Minnie and they will say how bad a program is so that other students don't rank that program highly and that they rank it highly and are more likely to get in. So be careful. Student doctor network, Doximity, I gather that they're better. I did hear from a student that student doctor network is sort of going the same way. Oh, that's true. All right, so applications. How many programs do you apply for? It depends on your strengths. I usually recommend my students apply to 30 to 40. That may change as we change our number of signalings if we change them in the future. If you're a visa holder, I recommend more. Low step 2 score, definitely more. Couples more because you're trying to get that match. If you're very limited by the geography you want to live in, you're going to try and maximize your number of applications in that geographical area. And you ideally want to end up with about at least 10 interviews. Have I had many of my students match with less than 10 interviews? Yes. Have I had students who crazily interviewed 25 places when they could have matched probably 1 and got in? Yeah, I've had them do that too. Preliminary programs, generally speaking, you want to widen your applications and apply to more of the prelim programs than you are residencies. This is something from AAMC, and it's a little confusing to look at, so I'll try and talk you through it if I can remember how it works. All right, so this is looking at different step 1 scores. These green ones are step 1 scores more than 244. The purple, 230 to 243. This is radiology specific, by the way. And the blue are less than 229, and it's how many programs you need to apply to before as a point of diminishing returns. So high step 1 score 31 goes up to maximizes on about 45 with no, I don't know why you're doing that, computer. Goes up to about 45 if you have a lower step score. So, you know, the lower your step score is, the more, but you can see here it plateaus off. So applying to 80 is not going to help you. Go to the AMA, look for FRIDA online, choose your selection criteria, and it's going to come up with the different programs. You can select your program setting, and your choice is university, university affiliated, or community and/or community. Community programs, you know, they have a different teaching background. They may or may not be ones you want to apply for, depending on where you're coming from. What about internships? So your options are, generally speaking, going to be transitional, surgery, or medicine. Skills obtained, and this is a very biased personal experience, but from when our first year residents come in, generally speaking, those who come from surgery are ahead of those who come from medicine, who are ahead of those who come from transitional, with the exception of a few very exceptional transitional programs. And IR, you should do surgery. Challenge involved, how hard you're going to work. Surgery is definitely worse, no question. Transitional is going to vary. There are some very laid back transitional programs where, to be honest, you don't learn a whole lot. Anyone need thoughts about that?
Says IR equals surgery.
Yes. I'm going to do IR, do surgery. You need to do it. You want to do it. All right, let's talk a bit about the interview. Do your research for the interview. Super important. Okay, go up. The program websites, I said, have really been beefed up. There's lots of videos going on, but do your research about the program. Do your research about the area. You know, the world's your oyster for the internet. Okay, you can't necessarily travel to there, or, you know, maybe you have to do it incognito to check out a particular area if you want to live in it. But there's a lot of stuff out there. So, you know, what do we want you to know? You know, where is it? What unique features does that program have? What fourth-year electives do you have, or mini fellowships? This stuff's all available on the sites. Do they have away rotations? What are the accomplishments of the faculty? You know, these are things that we've had asked to us in the interview. I particularly like, oh, I didn't know there were so many trees in New Hampshire. This was obviously when we had on-site interviews. If you look at Google Maps, this is us. There are a lot of trees in New Hampshire. So you can turn down an interview. So you can interview offer, turn it down if you don't want to do it. Don't feel, oh, well, you know, I really don't want to go there, but I'll interview anyway. You know, even though it's your 20th interview, don't do it. Let somebody else have that interview slot. But you can't just not turn up virtually or otherwise, right? It's considered very unprofessional. You need to email or better phone the coordinator, and the earlier you do it, like the morning of is not good, unless you're sick or something, obviously, but, you know, be on time, you know, contact them if you possibly can. It's unavoidable, we understand. But, you know, if you were going to cancel this interview and you knew last week, you need to cancel last week because somebody else can do it. Program directors all know each other. Chuck is on the line here. These two have now retired from, but you know, they're big buddies and we're all big buddies. So we know about these things. I've been contacted when a student didn't turn up because the program director was worried they got lost in a snowstorm or something.
Drew says your interview starts from your first contact with the TPA. You never know who will promote or tank your application.
That is very true. We're going to talk about that. Now, if you don't get an interview offer and you really want them, you know, reach out. So email or phone the coordinator, you know, particularly if you've got a special interest in that program. So not just, well, nobody's interviewing me, please interview me. But, you know, you reach out and say, you know, I really want to come to Dartmouth Hitchcock because of so-and-so. I wonder whether, you know, the program director would take another look at my application. And most of them will. You may or may not get a slot. If your couple and your significant other is interviewing at the same institution and you have not been offered an interview, definitely reach out. And as Drew just said, the interview starts the moment that you confirmed. Everything you say and do counts, okay? This is not social media. You are not anonymous. Coordinators have great power, as they should do. They would do an incredibly difficult job. And the last thing any program director wants to know is that you upset their coordinator. Okay, do not have your mother phone us up. We're not interested. We have heard from mothers. We're not interested. That tells us that you are perhaps not ready to leave home yet. Okay, so they don't have pre-interview dinners anymore, but they have pre-interview or day of interview or the day of interview social hours in a lot of places. They are considered part of the interview, although faculty, generally speaking, are not at them. They usually just have residents, but it's variable. They're good for getting program information. And they are, I think, very painful for you. So generally speaking, different places do different things. Some, they work it better than others. Some do breakout rooms and you get to chat to one or two residents at a time and you move around, which I think is better. The ones that do sort of big groups aren't necessarily so comfortable, but be engaged and ask questions. You know, if you just sort of sit virtually in the corner, you know, you're not going to be, you know, counted negative in any way, but I think you're losing an opportunity. And the residents do come back and they give us feedback. So be careful what you say. In the days when there were dinners, I've had students get drunk. We once had a $1,000 alcohol bill at a interview dinner. before we put in some limitations. The famous cake student who, after eating another candidate's dessert, we're asking them, and her partner said, well, what did you just do? And she said, oh, she won't care. Look how skinny she is. She doesn't eat dessert. She was known as a cake student through the entire ranking and ranked down. Let's talk a little bit about virtual interviews. And I'm sorry this talk's going to run over a bit. It seems like there's more data every year. So hang on in there, or if not, mark where we're up to and come back to it on the rerun. Log in ahead of time, right? Check your technology, make sure your hardware is working, make sure your software is working. And most programs will do a trial interview with the program coordinator if you have any concerns about technology, if it's a type of software you've not used before. Make sure you're very familiar with your schedule and how you're going to connect beforehand, and then find where you're going to do your interviews from. You want it to be quiet. You don't want people knocking on the door. You don't want children screaming next door. You want the lighting to be good enough that they can see your face, but without sort of big reflections coming off your glasses or your eyeballs. Make sure that it's a very neutral background, you know, just a sort of nice picture behind yourself, that you're somewhere with good bandwidth. If you don't have anything that fulfills these places, often the medical schools will offer you space, or, you know, somebody will be nice enough to lend you their office. You wouldn't want to do mine because it's such a mess. It would look bad. Check your background. This is me. I often do WebExes from my kitchen counter, which I thought was fine until somebody said, why do you have 2 cocktail shakers in your drinks cabinet behind? And then I had to start blurring my background. You know, putting a neutral virtual background in is okay, as long as you have the bandwidth and the software that it doesn't do that really irritating thing where you move and it cuts off half your ear. Don't panic if things freeze. Programs bring in, we do as well, right? A little bit, the potential, if everything goes down, that they can reschedule or fit you in. So, you know, nobody's going to penalize you for your computer dying. You know, we're used to this now. Dress as if you're for a live interview. And just be tolerant of glitches. You know, things have worked incredibly well considering, but, you know, we get glitches on our side, you get glitches on others, and you just roll with it. It'll be okay. I'm sure you'll remember this momentous thing. Be careful that you're dressed both top and bottom. AAMC does have quite a nice guide about virtual interviews. I suggest you download it. And so what are you going to say? All right, so we already know you're smart. We've got your CV. We know you went to, you know, these great institutions. You made the cut at this point. We can see all the hard stuff, but, you know, we want to know who you are. We want to spend 4 or 5 years with you sitting next to us. You know, can you relate and interact to us? Are we going to be dredging out comments from you, or can you communicate really well? Do you seem to be a team player, or are we worried that you're going to be very kind of selfish? Are you a potentially challenging resident? You know, we're looking for red flags. We really want you to engage us and talk to us. You know, are you interested in us as well as us being interested in you? You know, so you want to ask some specific questions. Are you weird? Weird is bad, right? Because we think, well, if you can't act normal for 20 minutes in a virtual interview, you're probably not going to be able to act normal for 4 years.
Mom says people like people who like people.
That is true. That is a true fact. So we want, you know, if you know about our program, we like it. We don't want you to come with a blank slate. So this is what I meant about doing your research before you come. So these might be sort of questions that you might ask, specific questions to faculty when you're there. We like, you know, people who are relaxed and carry on a conversation. They're enthusiastic about the specialty. They're enthusiastic about the program. We don't want you to be enthusiastic about the lifestyle, like, you know, dude, I've heard that you can always go home at 5 o'clock in radiology because I only want to work 0.6. So is that a thing I can do? All right. You know, we all work really, really hard. We want you to be honest about any issues or questions in your application, and that you'll fit into our culture. And every program has a different culture. So I can't give you the answer to that. We like people who have retrievers and 2 children, but you know, that's us. And like hiking,
Yeah. Up there.
like hiking and skiing. You know, show extra interest. So if you have an interest in a particular subspecialty, then ask if it's possible to have a web chat with somebody who you know or have heard of. Don't just pick a random faculty off the website, but you know, somebody you've heard of, or it sounds really interesting, or you've seen their, you know, they're on Twitter and they put up a load of cool cases or whatever. So this kind of things. Ask if you can watch a streamed resident lecture. You know, body language is important, okay? You can be sort of, you know, too laid back, too tense, or just kind of nice like the lady in the middle. If you haven't watched Amy Cuddy, this is it's got millions of views, this TEDx. Take a look at this. What do we like? We hate generic questions because it shows that you haven't bothered looking in. Probably the worst question is, what are the strengths and weaknesses of your program? Or even worse, tell me about your program. You know, we are interviewing you. You are not interviewing us precisely.
But Drew's got to leave.
Joe's got to leave here. Thanks, Drew. So, you know, don't ask these generic questions. Have your questions written down on a piece of paper so you know. We really don't like you not being able to substantiate something that's in your application, or that we can't, you know, get you talking, that you give one-word answers. Turn your cell phone off, even though it's virtual. Disable notifications on your computer so it's not going ding, ding, ding all the way through. Put a sign on the door so nobody walks in on you. If you have small children, lock them in the basement. I don't know. We don't like overly casual language. You know, we like people to be friendly, but, you know, we're not best friends. We had somebody wear a pink sparkly tube top once, was always known as the pink sparkly tube top girl. So what do you not need to say? You don't have to say where else you're interviewing, okay? That's super important. And that there are a lot of rules about this that can have us thrown out of NRMP if we disregard them. So you should feel, you know, obviously not to say, aha, I'm going to report you to NRMP for saying that, but it's good to come up with some answers if some faculty who has not been well educated in this or is ignoring our rules, to get them off track. So if you say, you know, they say, well, where else are you interviewing? You say, oh, bunch of places in the Northwest, and then some in the Southeast, and then a couple in the Northeast, you know, I mean, something like that. Family personal information is none of their business. If you want to share that you have 7 children and your wife is pregnant with the 8th, you are welcome to do that, but they cannot ask you. They cannot ask you if you're planning to have children in university. They cannot ask you if you're married. They cannot ask you if you're gay. Right? We could not do that. And, you know, you need to come up with some phrase. This doesn't happen often, but it does happen, to just say, you know, I'm sorry, but I don't feel that's appropriate for me to discuss in this situation, or something like that. Certainly you should not say, and they absolutely should not ask, where you are ranking them or other programs, okay? Now, you're going to be nervous. You're going to feel like you're under the spotlight, but we're really nice, okay? Most people are really nice. Nobody is grilling you with this. We want to bring out your best. So, you know, relax. You'll be really, really, really fed up with these interviews by the end of them. You're going to have 3 or 4 interviews, or maybe even more at each place. So it's difficult to kind of keep, you know, not sort of rote answering things, but do your best. All right, so what are you going to look for in a program? Right, you know the hard data, you can find that, but you want to get an idea of the feel of the place. Do you want to spend several years here? Do they make you feel welcome, or are they making you feel like you're the 110th student that they've interviewed? When you get a chance to interact with the residents, do they seem happy? Do the staff seem happy? Is there a lot of turnover of faculty? If you can find that out, you know, you can ask the residents, you know, have you had a lot of faculty leave? Have you had residents leave? The program director is absolutely key to your life in a program. And if you hate the program director, you know, think about that as a red flag. On the other hand, if you love a program director, that's a really good thing. You'll love ours, by the way. Stephanie, right here. I'm embarrassing her. Are there opportunities for your spouse, your partner, your family in the area? Are there good schools if you've got school-age kids? Will they be able to get a job? You know, obviously your opportunities are going to vary depending on whether you're in a rural area or whether you're in a more urban area. Look beyond the resources on the program website. There are tons of resources on the web. Lifehacker.com, it's got these great places how you can learn about a city without ever leaving a living room. Lots of places, lots of these sites came up during COVID. You want to look for research opportunities if you're interested in research. Some of the mini fellowships and the elective opportunities that are now available in the fourth year, they vary dramatically between different programs, and you might not care at the moment, but you may be more interested later on. What are the board pass rates? Absolutely fine to ask that. What are the ratios between residents and fellows? It's a plus minus. If you have a lot of fellows, you may get less hands-on doing stuff, but they also are a good teaching resource. You know, how often are the didactic lectures? What quality are they? Who's giving them? Is it faculty, or are the residents giving 50% of the lectures, which does happen in some community programs? How often do you do call? Salary and benefits vary somewhat across the country, mostly commensurate with the cost of living, but not entirely commensurate with the cost of living. So that's not really something that factors, generally speaking, although I have heard somebody was didn't apply to a program in Seattle because they were very broke and it's really expensive to live there and the salary wasn't enough for them. Okay, now, you are going to get these all mixed up when you've interviewed at half a dozen places. So it's super important that you keep track as you go along. So have a little spreadsheet, write out what's important to you, some of the things I've talked about, and I'm sure you'll have other things, and keep track of the programs and make comments, because you're going to need this as you come to do your ranking. I've asked many times whether thank you cards should be sent out or not. And I'm still getting, every time I've asked in a group of program directors, there's very mixed responses. Anyone who's on, perhaps they can tell us. You know, I think what's your feelings?
I mean, I think that towards the end of the season, if this is a program that, if we're your top program, then I think it's great if you want to email me and let me know that. The other ones, you know, to say thank you. I mean, it's great. I read all of them that come through, but it really doesn't hold that much weight.
So it's not a bad thing to do. Most people think that email is fine. You don't have to do a handwritten card. Send them immediately while you can make them personal. Try and make them, you know, bring out some comment that, you know, oh, I really enjoyed us talking about hiking in the White Mountains or whatever it happened to be, so that you're not just doing a generic one. And then your selected programs consider following up if you're going to do it, but it's not required.
Mom says it can't hurt, but I do feel like it might be a strategy. So do it well if you do it.
We are very cynical about if you tell us, I have ranked you #1, because we know by the end of the season, if you did rank us #1, if we ranked you to match. So I don't think you have a lot to gain from saying it, and just because we're cynical about it. But if you say it, make sure it's true. All right, so talking a little bit about ranking. So this NOMP data from 2022, again, this is your ranked list length for 95% match. This is for MDs. I couldn't find the data for DOs. I'm sorry about that if you're DO on the line. So you can see here that your probability of matching, sort of once you get up to 15, is 95%. So, you know, nice if you've got 15. You know, even if you've got 10 or 11, you're at 90%. IR seems to be a little bit of a steeper curve here. So there are less programs. So that's why it's a smaller number. The numbers that people have ranked have gradually increased. Look, here is 2004 to 2022. The unmatched candidates have stayed down here, but the number 2 match has gradually snuck up there. If you hate a program, don't rank it. Otherwise, you should rank all of them. I think it's super helpful to rank as you go along. We rank students as the interviews go along. So at the end of every day, the students, the residents and faculty who have been involved in the process get together and they shuffle people up and down the ranking board, what's that board called again? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
anyway, we shuffle them up and down. I suggest you do the same. So at the end of every day, move programs up and down compared to, you know, your current thoughts. It's going to be much easier. But, you know, the top 3 and the bottom 3 are usually easier to find. The rest, you kind of stick in. Try not to fall in love with the program so much that if you get your second choice that you're bitterly disappointed, because it'll be fine. You're going to get a good education. This is from 2023, looking at how many, this is all specialties. It's not divided out by radiology, but you can see that, you know, MD and DO seniors, nearly 50% got their first choice. So, you know, your odds are good. And you've got like a 2/3 probability of getting your top 2 choices. Now, what about applying to more than one specialty? This is an interesting and sensitive area. This is 10% applied to more than one specialty. This was, if you look here, number of applicants, there's a significant number who applied to more than one specialty. I think this is kind of interesting that 15 applied to 4 or more. This is 2022 data. So, you know, a fair number of candidates are applying to more than one specialty, and very, very few, in fact, 4, applied to just IR as opposed to IR, and the majority of these are DR as well, and then some had DR and another one.
There's a question about when to interview if you're given a chance. Is it better to interview earlier or later in the cycle for a specific program?
I don't know that I can answer that. Can you answer that?
I don't think so. I'm going to remember if you sweep me off if I'm struck by you, I'll remember you whether you've interviewed earlier or later. So I think you should do it whatever is best for you in terms of your schedule. Tom, do you have anything else to add?
I think there's kind of pros and cons on both. If you're one of our first interviewers, sometimes you make a great impression and you're not comparing.
You're going to have to type because
sorry.
I don't think they're going to hear you well. I can't hear you. Tom's going to put his comments in there. So interestingly, more people are applying to more than one specialty now than they did back in 2010. You know, it was really back then, it was a kiss of death to be applying to more than one program. There are different thoughts about how you should do this. I would like to think, I would recommend that you are honest with your medical school, where you really have to be honest with them, and talk to them about being honest to your faculty advisor, because it's really difficult for us to advise you if we don't know what you're doing. I had a student who I congratulated about his great match, not realizing that actually he'd matched in plastics at the match ceremony, and he'd never told me he was applying to plastics. So, you know, it didn't sort of give me a really good feeling about him. Ironically, he then transferred to radiology years later. If I would not, however, when you go on interviews, broadcast that fact. I don't think that we are quite in the place as radiology to be open-minded enough for you to say, yeah, well, I'm applying to radiology, I'm applying to orthopedics, but you're my backup in radiology. So I would suggest, unless you have a really good rapport with the interviewing person, that you keep that quiet. There's a lot to say about this, but I think it's better discussed offline or with your advisors. What about couples? Number of couples in the match is going up. Generally speaking, most of them match. That's the turquoise one. Blue is one matched, and unfortunately, there's a small amount who neither match. It's challenging. You do need to apply to a lot more places. And you really need to get your advice and correlate your list very closely. I don't really have time to talk about that any further because I want to leave a little time for an open question session. But, you know, if we can help you with that, we will. All right. So sorry about that very long session. I hope that most people managed to hang in there, and then we're open for any questions. Any questions coming up? If not, we're going to be gone. Close, session closed. Oh,
What are the best tools to assess your competitiveness?
so the AAMC has a number of really good tools on its site, interactive tools, where you can put in, it's literally like a drop-down list of, you know, I've got 5 research papers and this is my step score and this sort of thing. So that can help you. The other one is Texas Star. You can do a similar thing. So that can help you. So try one of those resources, but also, you know, obviously talk to your mentor.
What do you think makes applicants stand out in the best way?
I'm going to get you to answer that.
I mean, I think you need to be honest. I mean, everything that we've sort of discussed in this webinar, I mean, be honest, be enthusiastic, know the program that you're applying to. And I mean, I'm looking in the interview just to have a great conversation and getting to know you and see if you're going to fit into our program culture. That's what I'm using the interview for. My colleagues tell me, like, I want to make sure that we get people that they feel comfortable spending, you know, 8 hours a day with in the reading room. So that's what I'm looking for. How do DRPDs view applicants that have a strong sense that they may be pursuing ESI or IR fellowship?
So again,
We have an ESIR program. I mean, I think as with any DR that would be not be doing ESIR, I have no bias towards any of them. So if you're interested in an ESI program, I think Tom would be very happy. We have an ESI program. We've not had a resident do the ESI program yet. So would encourage you. I mean, it's another way to get into IR. So what % of the interviews are given to applicants who signal?
I showed that slide, but I can't remember the answer.
I can't
To look
either.
I'll come back. You go on to the next question. I'll
How
find.
do you balance being an IR and DR applicant at the same time, especially when you may be made interview for, let's see, but especially when you may interview for both within the same institution? Well, I can answer that for us. If you apply to our DR program and you also apply to our IR program, if IR invites you, your interview for IR counts for your DR interview. So you do not have to interview twice. So that's what we do here at Dartmouth.
So here's that data for so about 60% of interviews went to people who signaled.
I don't know if there's any other PDs on that would want to address that, but if you, your IR interview, if you apply to our DR program, counts, and so you want to interview once with us. And Tom says, no bias, rate IR pathway, just be honest.
No, so Emmanuel, you get 12 signals in total. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that. So if you're applying to IR and DR, you get 12 signals. You don't get 12 for each.
Georg is asking, I don't know if this has been answered yet, but what if you have 2 IR letters of recommendations and 1 DR letter and are applying to DR, is that okay? As long as, you know, you have people who are writing your letters of recommendation, know you well, I personally am happy with any combination you provide. You could have like 1 letter of recommendation from radiology and have 2 from medical specialties who know you well, or from one of your research mentors, and that would be equally good for me as well.
I mean, don't forget, we're not judging you on your ability for doing interventional radiology, right? That's what, or radiology for that matter. You know, you come for us to teach you that. you know, we're not sort of, okay, does he know how to read CTs? Does he know how to catheterize the internal carotid artery? You know, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for your, you know, your personality, your skills, your knowledge, you know, that are generally applicable, not specific. All right, MS is saying, what are my thoughts on including non-radiology related experience in ERAS? I think it's good. I think it's very good. It's not something in negative, like, you know, you didn't discover your interest in radiology later in medical school. Well, you know, I've got a current applicant who's 55. So, you know, she discovered it way later in life. So, you know, it's not a bad thing. It's not a negative thing. We don't expect you to come out of the womb, you know, thinking you want to be a radiologist. I didn't discover I want to be a radiologist till I was 3 years out of medical school. So, you know, I included, if they're important things that affected your life, affected your personality, affected your skills, they should be included. You know, to my mind, it's kind of more boring if you know, you went straight to school and then you went straight to college and then you went straight to medical school and then you're coming out. That makes me think, well, has this, you know, are there life experiences there that really will mean this person can be an independent working adult, earning a salary, doing work? You know, residency is not medical school. Okay, what else we got? I've got lots of things here.
Basically touch base on like.
12 things.
Like, it's like, what should you, like, as well, I think, of course, I mean, I think being a nurse is a previous employment is equally important. It shows your responsibility, professionalism, your work ethic. I think you should definitely include it. And then for Nicholas, I would include it as well. Experience, I mean, if these are important, like obviously quality experiences of publications that you had prior to medical school, you should include in your application.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got your 10 experiences. So you're going to have to, if you are, you know, 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever, you've had a lot of experiences and you're going to have to really work out, you know, which ones are the ones that have really impacted you and impacted you in ways that, you know, and they may have been negative experiences. They may have been you know, a spouse who died or something, but they may be very profoundly impact on how you've chosen to, you know, work for the rest of your life and study or your attitude to people. So, you know, I think these are all good. You know, effort lots. Tell us about your patients. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, coming as a nurse to radiology, I think it's fabulous. I think it's
Perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Resident who was a nurse before, practitioner.
I don't know, but I know we had at least a couple who applied this past term.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. We've had people who've been radiographers before. One of our residents was somebody who was a vet. Yeah, several PAs. You know, I think life experiences are good. Okay, any other questions? A little flowy there. Thank you all so much for attending and for staying so late. And I wish you all the best of luck. I know it's a very, very stressful time, but you know, most people do get in. If you don't get in your first time, then, you know, work with somebody to make sure you're the best candidate the second time. All right. Bye, everyone.
It doesn't even look like Tom. It looks like Scarlett. Really happy. No, a sombrero. I didn't recognize that one's in.
Is he live?